Hi, my name is Chris Hukins. I'm a professor at George Washington University Law School in Washington, D.C. Wanted to take just a couple minutes to talk to you about some important developments in U.S. and EU public procurement law that have to do with green procurement or environmentally sustainable procurement. This is based on a short article that Marta Andolf from the University of Copenhagen and I just published in the Government Contractor. That article is available on my website, publicprocurementinternational.com. The focus of our article was that governments can serve as catalysts to fix or address global warming. In the U.S., for example, public procurement policy in the federal government can affect over 7%, up to approximately 8% of our gross domestic product. In the EU, because of the importance of public procurement in the European Union's member states markets, it can affect up to 15% of the economy there in the European Union. So what we've seen develop to a really remarkable extent is common strategies on both sides of the Atlantic, both in the European Union and in the United States, especially now in the Biden administration, to address global warming through public procurement policies. Some of those policies or some of those strategies include creating preferences in certain products or product categories and related initiative. And these are, in the United States, these are reflected in proposed rules. A stronger use of eco labels, which are labels that identify environmentally favorable products in specific categories. An approach or strategy that's being pushed especially hard by the Biden administration is to educate the leadership and the workforce in the government about the benefits of sustainability. The last common strategy, and this is working forward in various stages of maturity on both sides of the Atlantic, is to address greenhouse gases emissions and their social costs, their collateral, their externalities costs in procurement planning over the life cycle of a product, for example. And here's really the brass ring. The ultimate goal is to be able to address the greenhouse gas emissions attributable to any good or service in an evaluation for award. To get there, in order to be able to assess greenhouse gas emissions as, for instance, a scored factor in a procurement award, which is really in the procurement community a core goal here in addressing global warming. To be able to do that, the vendors involved have to compile data on the greenhouse gas emissions that are attributable to goods and services. That's extremely difficult and extremely expensive. In both the U.S. and the European Union, to a remarkable extent, again, in terms of parallels, you're seeing broader government efforts, for example, to ask in the United States that publicly traded companies chronicle the greenhouse gas emissions that are attributable to their goods or services. Those broader efforts to require that, for example, through the Securities and Exchange Commission, that publicly traded companies compile data on their greenhouse gas emissions. More specifically, in the procurement realm, that major contractors compile data on their goods and services greenhouse gas emissions. Those initiatives have faltered over the last few months. This is a very important development. So, for example, in the United States, in the National Defense Authorization Act that was passed at the end of 2023, the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2024, Section 318, which reflected a very strong opposition in Congress to requiring defense contractors to chronicle the greenhouse gas emissions attributable to the services and goods they provide to the Defense Department. Section 318 blocked the Defense Department from requiring contractors to deliver that data to the government temporarily for a year for traditional defense contractors and permanently for the non-traditional defense contractors. At the same time, really in a very close parallels, both of the Securities Exchange Commission in Washington and in the securities regulation in the European Union, similar efforts to require corporations to chronicle their greenhouse gas emissions. They faltered as well. So what we're seeing is that a core strategy in addressing global warming is faltering. And that is largely because it appears because of the costs of chronicling, of gathering that data on the greenhouse gas emissions. For example, the regulatory impact statement that we cite in our article, regulatory impact statement for the U.S. effort in the procurement realm, put the cost at many, many millions of dollars for a large corporation. So core goal here in procurement and more broadly in addressing global warming is to get corporations, to compel corporations either across the marketplace or in specific sectors such as the defense sector to chronicle their greenhouse gas emissions. What's emerging as a core variable in that is the cost, because if the costs are very high, that generates a good deal of political opposition, and that political opposition will undo this effort to address global warming. So I want to flag that's an important emerging consideration in these green procurement strategies and more broadly in strategies to address global warming, that the costs become a very important part in the policy discussion, and they should need to be considered early on as we're weighing various strategies to address what really is a global problem in greenhouse gas emissions. Thanks very much.